Hey guys, what's up? Today I have another story for you. Today we will be reading the My Little Pony fanfiction, Believing Stories by Typewriter Error. This one was recommended to me, so by all means I'm going to do it. So, let's get right into it. This is Believing Stories, Chapter 1. This Isn't Home. The sun woke up before she did that day. A groan rolled from her throat. Her sore, bloodshot eyes slowly squinted, opened to powder blue sheets. This wasn't her bed. She blinked again, slowly, but the sheets did not change. This place was far from her palace bedchamber. But how far? Where was she? As sleep lazily slid from her mind, a chill took her. Something wasn't right. Her whole body felt different. Had she been shaved completely? Why was she wearing clothes? Instinctively, her hands gripped the blankets and she wrapped herself tighter in the fabric. Hands. Her eyes locked onto the claw-like things holding her covers close. She had hands like a minotaur, only more delicate. The blanket was released as she lifted her right hand to her face. From her shallow palm branched 5 pale digits, with nails filed short. She felt her sharp breath flow over her bare skin. Human. The word confused her as soon as it entered her mind. Where had it even come from? She looked down at herself and saw her body was covered with a plain white shirt. She had some hair over her skin, but it was nothing like the silky alabaster coat that she was accustomed to. Human? Such a strange word. What does it mean? Just where had she heard it before? It was familiar. She knew that word, but how? How had it entered her mind? She pulled her knees to her chest and wrapped her arms around them, feeling the bones of her arms press against her legs. The muscles and tendons of her back pulled as if they were tired or bruised. Her hands touched her face. Her muzzle was gone. She only had a slooping nose above a small mouth with soft lips. She was human. Her hands explored her face. She could feel her cheekbones. Despite her best efforts, Celestia was panicking. How was she human all of a sudden? Her hands felt along the back of her neck and stopped at her hair. Her hair was almost entirely gone. It was barely long enough to grip with her shaking fingers. Human. The nails in her hand were filed or cut short. Why were they so short? Why was she like this? Who was she? I am Princess Celestia. Her voice was still there. At least that had not changed. Everything else was changed. Where was she? Her eyes turned to the ceiling. Tiles. The ceiling was gray tiles with a rectangle in the center made of some clear material. She could see white bars through the frosted cover. What was it? Her hands reached back and held the blanket closer to her chest. She heard a small crinkle and looked at the white knuckles of her hands. The covers were lifted slowly, and Celestia noticed a small pocket in front of her shirt. A piece of paper was folded up and tucked inside. Curious, she slipped it out and turned it over in her fingers. The paper unfolded stiffly, and Celestia could see a short letter. She sat up in her bed and bent over the letter, examining the shaky, printed words. Dear Princess Celestia, waiting for what your heart desires can be really hard, so you may try to take a shortcut. But this dishonesty never works because you didn't earn what your heart desired. The only cure is being honest with yourself and others. That's something every heart desires. Yours truly, Apple Bloom. She turned the letter over in her hands, but found the only thing written on it was what she had just read. Apple Bloom. That was Applejack's sister, wasn't it? But where did this note come from? What was it doing here? This definitely was not a usual friendship report. Yet it was, or at least it seemed it was, supposed to be a letter written to her like a friendship report. What did it matter? Where was she, and why was she there? Where was Twilight? Where was Luna? Was Luna playing her dreams and giving her nightmares? She folded the paper again. Was this a dream, then? This isn't funny, Luna, she challenged the empty room that had echoed her voice back at her. She didn't wake up. I mean it! This isn't funny! The silence deafened her ringing ears. A clang from the door shook her, and she hastily tried to shove the paper back in her pocket. The pristine steel door swung inward, and 2 humans quickly entered. The first was a girl who didn't look old enough to wear the scrubs she had on with any authority. Her wild blonde hair was tied back in a messy bun, making her brown eyes stand out on her pale, impish face. Her fingers perched on the handle of the door as she took cautious, curious steps into the room. She looked like no pony Celestia knew. Another human, a man, swept into the room like an advancing wind. Celestia glanced at his deep brown eyes momentarily before he held out his hand towards her. "Now you remember what we told you about the notes. Please give that to me," he asked in a voice that was deep and resonant, but seemed to have a familiar note of mischief in it. The voice was too familiar. "Luna, I want to wake up now!" the woman on the bed called. The man looked pained and advanced towards her. "Give me that note, please." Celestia seized the covers and held them over the pocket where the letter rested. Why was Luna not waking her up? She knew better than to keep her in dreams like this. Why would Luna keep her in a dream like this? "Should I give her a sedative?" the girl asked, her hand fully wrapped around the handle of the door. Celestia's eyes darted back to the man. This was either Luna's idea of a joke. "No, that's not necessary. Besides, we don't know how it will react with her treatment." Or this was not a dream. How this could possibly be real, she didn't know. But she knew that he was not getting this letter from her. It didn't make sense, but somehow she knew that she had to hold on to it. No, this had to be a dream. His hand lay open towards her, waiting, within arm's reach, for the letter. She shrunk away from him, as her eyebrows drew together. He wasn't going to get it. "Daddy?" "Honey, listen to me. Do not get nervous. This will only encourage her act rashly," he cautioned the nurse. "But we must all remain calm and reasonable. Mustn't we, Celeste?" He spoke without taking his eyes off the trembling woman in front of him. He calmly kept his hand held out towards her. "Celeste? Do you really think I'm going to believe any of this, Discord?" "Give me the note." "Answer my question!" "Let me help you." She spat into his open hand. He didn't even flinch. His steady gaze was beginning to make her shift. Why had she done that? She was never so disrespectful, not even to him. "Please, may I have the paper?" "What does it mean to you?" "It means nothing to me, but to you, it furthers your delusions." "Delusions?" she scoffed. "You haven't been well these past few years." "This is ridiculous!" "Please give me the paper." "No!" "Why don't we talk to her then?" He turned from her and stepped towards a metal table with 3 chairs set around it. The chairs were bolted to the floor, at a comfortable distance from the all-secured table. The girl remained at the door with her hand wrapped around the handle and her eyes fixed on Celeste. Celeste didn't move. She watched the man by the table patiently. Something wasn't right. He was not gloating. Celestia looked at the girl, who shifted nervously by the door. Who was she, anyway? If this doctor was Discord, how did she know him? Why did she call him Daddy, when he could never have had a child? Did he adopt some pony? "I don't want to talk." "Well then, give me the note." "No." "You have to give up one thing or the other." "Or what?" He shrugged and sat in one of the corners. "Then I'm just going to sit here." "Until I talk or give you the paper?" "That's the idea." "And if I talk to you, can I keep the note?" "Perhaps." She crossed her arms and settled into her bed. "Then I'll do neither." "Celeste, you realize we can take the note from you at any moment. However, it's better for you to give it to us." "Then you're going to have to force me." His shoulders sagged with a heavy sigh. "I had hoped it wouldn't come to this." He looked towards the girl. "Sarah." With a jump, she looked at him. "Please bring Nurse Alice. Tell her Celeste isn't cooperating." Sarah nodded her head and left, pulling the door shut behind her, leaving Celeste and the doctor in the concrete room. Celeste looked towards the calm man, casually sitting at the table with his eyes fixed on her. She stretched against the tension in her neck. Looking at him was uncomfortable. Looking away from him brought the feeling of his gaze on her. say something, she wished. The room seemed buried in silence. Celeste heard the sound of fabric as she shifted again. She could almost hear him breathe. She could certainly hear her own breath, rushed, deliberate, cautious. Her heartbeat began to throb in her ears. The rectangle of light from the window crawled towards the door. If only she could follow it and slip from the room easily. But was Equestria just outside the window? She hugged her knees and rested her chin on them. Nothing felt right here. The air in the room tasted stale, dusty. She was cold, but maybe the cold wasn't just from her coat being gone. Would Twilight be outside if she could escape? Would Luna? Had they noticed she'd gone yet? Celeste, she jerked her head up to look at the false door. Her face hardened. My name is Princess Celestia. May I call you Celeste? No, my name is Princess Celestia. No nickname? Definitely not. Was there something you remember your friends calling you? You're not my friend, she said after a long, empathetic stare. Well, I want to be. You're not yourself. Why are you doing this? How is she here? Not just in this room, but halfway over the table. Her knuckle bones pushed against the stickly pale skin of her hands, and she gripped Discord's coat. She had grabbed him and was right in his face, challenging him. How could he make her lose herself so fast? His brown eyes were terrifying. They were livid under his arched eyebrows. Celestia cowered back without realizing what she was doing. Her hands were a frozen lock on the collar of his coat. She could feel the cold paleness of her bloodless cheeks and his strong hands wrapped around her own, sliding between her fingers and palms, forcing her hands to release the crumpled white cloth. She looked away, sitting back down. That surprised you, didn't it? She was too shocked to keep herself from nodding. You keep forgetting you've been like this for a while. When we took you out of the catatonic state, this became your normal behavior. That's why we don't want you writing notes to yourself. He held out his hand, but Celestia didn't respond. Celeste, look at the note. She gave him an unsure glance, but her hand slid into the pocket of her shirt, drawing the paper out between her middle and index fingers. As soon as she glanced at it, she felt she wanted to hide it again. This wasn't a friendship report. As she unfolded the note, the smell of ash refused to rise from the paper. They always smelled like ash and smoke. She took a sniff from the folds, but only smelled paper. The handwriting seemed fit, though rough, full-like, printed carefully. But what had she just done? His eyes still burned her memory. She would never act like this before. Princesses remained calm under stress. What was wrong with her? What was wrong with him? He was definitely not the monster that had been resealed only a few months ago. Please. His hand stayed extended towards the hesitant woman, playing with the note in her claw-like fingers. But why should I even trust you? Because if you don't give me that note, I will have to stay here until you do, constantly trying to get you to talk. Do you want that? If they've reached her like this, no matter how odd this is, they can reach her again. One note could give her a couple hours of peace to sort her mind out. His fingers met the skin of her hand briefly as she placed the letter in his palm. He trapped the note behind curled fingers once she withdrew her hand. She felt guilt sink into her chest as he gave her a comforting smile. Don't worry. We'll help you get through this, he reassured her. He stood up and placed a strong hand on her shoulder. The gears of the door ground and the hinges squeaked as the girl pushed the thick door inward. Celestia kept her fingers fixed on the rounded edges of the table. I heard you needed my help, a svelte female voice said. It's unnecessary now. She agreed to cooperate, he said, taking his hand from her shoulder and advancing towards the door. So, the drugs are beginning to work then? The girl asked as she surrendered the door handle to Discord. Of course they are, Screwball, the female voice said. Celeste jumped as the door slammed shut. And that was Believing Stories by Typewriter Error. That was chapter 1, This Isn't Home, and I intend to get to the next chapter sometime soon, so long as this one goes over well. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you enjoyed. And I'll talk to you later. Bye.